Well, tonight I'm going to start working on putting some lines on the fuel injector and the injection pump, and putting the oil filter housing on. And I need to crank the engine up on the test stand, so I'm not going to have my oil cooler. It's not going to be in a car. So a guy on the forums told me these are M18 by 1.5 fittings. So I'm going to get that M18 to 1.5 to a 10 AN fitting. And from working on the race car over the years, I've accumulated lots of AN fittings, and I had some leftover 10 AN hose here. So I'm just going to throw a couple of these fittings, on the end of the hose like this. That's a 10 AN line. 10 AN is plenty for an oil flow to flow through. And then I'm going to, I guess, take this and let's see here. I'll bend it over like that and connect it onto the adapter. So I'll just create a closed loop. So when the oil thermostat opens, trying to send oil to the cooler, here we go. I'll just have this loop right here, and I'll remove those fittings that are in there and put this loop there. That way I don't have to have the oil cooler hooked up. And I think I'm going to run it, maybe just for, 30, 45 seconds, just to make sure everything works. So I'm not going to bother hooking up a radiator or filling it with coolant, because the engine does not get hot that quick. So anyway, I'm going to order some of those fittings and then put that 10 AN line on there on the oil filter housing and get it installed on the engine. But I just wanted to show you how you make these. First thing you do, you wrap some just normal electrical tape around here. You wrap it really tight. And you can use a Dremel tool to cut these. But I went ahead years ago and bought some, looks like I nicked them right there a little bit, and bought some AN, there we go. They're literally called AN hose cutters. And see if I can do this with one hand. So I just cut it off. And what that tape does, it keeps all the little, I guess, frayed metal ends. For example, like that right there, you don't want those sticking out. It keeps them all tight together. So then you can come back. See, it's also, when you cut them, it kind of mushes everything together when you cut it. And then you can go back with one of these guys, and you can leave the tape on there. You do not have to take that tape off, because once you put this on, so we're just gonna go all the way up. You just kind of twist and push. Yeah, that's pretty good. Let's go a little bit more. There we go. Just kind of twist and push it on there. And then to get this in there, this is really the harder part. I put a little engine oil right here, and then you push it in there and you twist, and then you can get it screwed in there. So the engine oil just helps it to slip into the hose. So I'll do that and then start recording again. I got the thread started on there, and normally you don't want to put it in a vise, or you want something to protect it because it'll scrape up these aluminum fittings. But look, this one is a hose that's just going to be used in the shop to test a new engine, so I don't care if it's all marred up. It's not going in a car. It doesn't need to look pretty. There we go. Come on, get out of here. And there you go. You just crank this AN fitting down there until you want it to get, there'll be a little bit there'll be a little bit of a gap right there, but they get, it'll get pretty flush. So I'm going to finish. It'll get, I'm going to go ahead and finish without recording. It's done. This side. See, there's a pretty, the gap's pretty close there. It's not all the way seated up against the red, but that's far enough. And wish you could see down in there better. But that is how you make an AN fitting. And the reason I'm doing this is I'm putting M18 by 1.5, M18 male by 1.5 to 10 AN fittings on the oil filter housing, so that I can screw this in on the send and screw that in on the return and just create a closed loop. Okay, so I took the fittings. These are the factory fittings, M18 by 1.5. It looks like, yeah, there we go. That's how they go in there. One end's bigger than the other. But I just took these. I took these out of here, and I did it with my air compressor. And I took those out with the air compressor. Let's see. It was a 15/16 script onto these fine, because I don't have the tall metric socket. So I took these guys out, and then I'm going to put in the fittings I ordered to run this AN, and I'll just loop one end to here and one end to here and just create a closed loop to bypass any kind of oil cooler. The fittings came in the mail today. Vibrant Performance 16635. And so it turns out the stock fitting, the M18 section, is a little shorter. The Vibrant section sticks out a little more. So I just stacked a bunch of crush washers behind them, because the threads don't go that deep into the housing. So anyway, I got those screwed in. Okay, I got that screwed on. That's how that's going to work. So when if the bypass opens, or for any reason it's not going to shoot the oil out of the engine, it'll just loop back through there. These are all the lines and the lift pump for the injection pump. So I'm going to put all that stuff back on, and I've got some new crush washers. Some of these are, yeah, that one's looking kind of raggedy, so I'm going to put some more crush washers. But I'm going to start putting all that stuff back on the injection pump, and I'll show you where it all goes. In order to get all the diesel lines attached and fuel lines attached, you got to attach the I guess it's the housing for the power or steering, the bracket for the power steering, and the filter. So you got two bolts that go here. This, I think, holds the what's it called? The vacuum line that comes from the vacuum pump. Goes up through here. Also, there's a dipstick tube holder that goes here in the side. And these two bolts also mount this to the block. So they serve two purposes: hold this bracket and mount this whole assembly to the block. And then we got another bolt right here that mounts it to the block. Goes through to the block right here. This one, let's see what else we got here. Looks like we got two long ones that go through to the bottom and mount into the block. So I'm going to go ahead and get this tightened up, and then we're going to run some of the lines. Guys, something else. So this came off the original engine. That's a little reusable zip tie. And then we have this funny little bracket right here. Oh no, I'm gonna have to clean that up. It's got some dirt on it, some grease on it. So this little bracket, oops, sorry. So this secures the bottom of the housing that I was just talking about. But this little bracket right here, that's funny. It sits like this, and there's this little zip tie goes around it, and it's used to zip tie I think that's the RPM or crank position sensor that goes right in there. This is what they used to mount that. And it goes on just like this right here. I'll show you that. Yeah, here it is right here. This little sensor, you know, that plugs into the crank position sensor bracket, or I don't know if it's a crank position sensor or RPM sensor, but whatever. And then this hooks onto that bracket using that zip tie. That's how they did it from the factory. All the bolts in here, 2 here, 1 here, 2 here, and these are going into iron. They're not going into aluminum. But these are basically, they're 13 millimeter. I guess that's pretty close to a 9/16. And the torque spec, you know, like on a hot rod or whatever for a 9/16, it's like 18 to 20 pounds. It's not much, so here's about 20 pounds. Let's see. I could look it up in the service manual, but no need. There you go. That's what 20 pounds looks like. It's not much. You don't need to crank these things down. They're not big bolts. Let's get this little bracket lined up here. Oops, sorry. Let's get this little bracket lined up. There it is right there. That's how Mercedes had it from the factory. And let's just torque that to 20 pounds. There we go. And I need to get a little extension to get in here and get that one. So I'll get that torque down, and then I'll start connecting lines. I'm about to put the power steering pump on. This was working great when I took apart the engine. It has about 150,000 miles on it. No issues with it, but you can see the paint is just, you know, coming off of it. Looks kind of janky. What does that say on the front? Turn out the light here. Lincoln the health pump. Yeah, whatever. 32 bar. Oh no, that says 82 bar. Pump type 25. Anyway, I'm just going to hit this with some engine enamel and make it look good. I just hit it in the parts cleaner and knocked off some dirt, and you can see the paint's come off in a lot of places. So I'm going to clean this up a little bit before I throw it back on the engine. And I just taped it up. Don't want to get paint in the groove here. And the front pulley's kind of cool because it still has the factory mark on it. I guess they put a green paint swab there when they torqued that down. I don't know. Still has the part number, and the paint's still on there good, so I don't want to hit that. And then I covered up the little plaque. So let's see what this looks like after I paint it. Okay, now I'm going to install the lift pump. I just cleaned it up. This thing was in good condition and working fine, and I actually have this original style lift pump on both of my other cars. Never had a failure. Now I realize this original style primer pump is prone to leaking, but I'm just going to go ahead and put that on there. If it leaks, it's an easy swap. You can just order another one, then it unscrews and you screw another one on. But it was not leaking on the car when I took the engine out. And it looks like Bosch, I'm going to lay this down here. It looks like Bosch included, I wonder if oil is going to come out of here. Oops, sorry. It looks like Bosch included a seal right there. So I'm just going to use that one. Let's see how thick this thing is. Oh yeah, that's good. Well, that's cool. You can see the camshaft up in there. There you go. See the cam lobe right there? That's how these injection pumps work. But so I'll just use that seal that Bosch included. That was nice of them. They also included the seal for the where it goes to the engine, the gasket, not the seal. All right, let's see. So I guess that's a cam lobe in there that runs this guy. So I bet you it's not going to go on there, and it's going to have to be pushed on there. Damn it, I'm horrible about holding this camera. Yeah, anyway, I bet there's obviously a cam lobe right there, and that lobe is an eccentric that turns and rotates that. So it probably is not going to press on there easily because of that. Yeah, just as expected. So I'm going to have to tighten it on there with the actual bolts. Yeah, see, if I push hard, see, it pushes the pump in. But if I let off, it wants to just come off. There we go. So I'm going to go ahead and get there's 3 little bolts and washers that go on there. And here's the original line. This German rubber, whatever they made these hoses out of, is amazing. I mean, these hoses, I don't know if you've ever tried to cut one or remove one. These things are like bulletproof. So I'm not going to bother reordering new hoses because these are all in great shape. But again, these things are like ninja plastic. I don't know what the hell this stuff is made out of. It's the best fuel hose I've ever seen on any car, period. It lasts for, I got some spray paint on my hand. I mean, this stuff has lasted for 40 years and it's fine. Now you don't want to go like creasing it. I'm sure it could be brittle, but stuff's great. So I'm not going to bother changing these fittings because when you change the fittings on a new hose, you have to heat these up and kind of melt it and then slice it, pull them off. They do not want to come off. And when you put the new ones on, if you ever have to do that, you have to heat it up and slightly melt it and then push it in real quick. It's a pain in the butt. But yeah, nothing wrong with these. I'm going to reuse them. You order the engine overhaul gasket set. I think it's the one from L-Ring. Yeah, the lower engine overhaul set. It comes with a pack of crush washers, all kinds of different sizes. Now, these are actually the spacers for the injectors. Let's see, the pre-chambers, and I didn't use all of them. I didn't need them. But tons of crush washers. I've got them sorted here by size. And a lot of that is for the fuel system. You can see here where this first line comes out of the fuel pump and see in to the filter. So let's take these off and see what size these are so we can replace those. Because these are the original ones, and crush washers, they can be reused. It's better to just replace them if you can. Let's see what size that is. God, 40 years old, it looks frickin' fine. That's crazy. That's the crazy thing about this engine. Everything looks fine on it. No, it's not that one. Here we go. Yep, it's those two. So, put my used ones aside. And of course the crush washer, you got to put one on that side. This is a banjo fitting. Banjo fittings are great. All the factory cars used them. GM, Mercedes. Usually in brake systems, brake lines, and fuel lines, you'll see banjo fittings. Here, the way a banjo fitting works is you have a little hole in this bolt right here. And in the banjo fitting, so you have a hole there where the fuel comes through, but see, it's like there's a valley in there. So the fuel can come through and flow around here, and it will flow around and shoot through this hole. See, like that. So the fuel comes in here, and there's a space all the way around here that allows the fuel to go in any one of these holes here, and then it shoots through here. Great design. They work great, especially on like high pressure brake systems or fuel systems. So that's, whoops, sorry. I'm not going to put any anti-seize on there because it's a fuel system. I don't know if, so I'm not going to snug that down yet. I'm going to look up the torque specs for that because that's aluminum, and you don't want to fuck around with aluminum when it comes to torque specs. So I'm going to look and see what Mercedes says. let's go ahead and find the ones for this one too. I just wanted to point out there's some copper washers in this set here. See, there's a couple of copper. There's 2 there. The rest are aluminum. And the aluminum ones are for connecting any of the lines to aluminum fittings. You know, here, 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 here. There's one in the back. But then you see, this is kind of interesting. There's a line that goes from here up to the, actually you can still see the copper washer stuck on there, up to the cast iron engine block. That one's got to be copper. So I got to get that old one off of there. And so when it's iron, use a copper. When it's aluminum, use an aluminum. I guess that's how Mercedes did it. I guess the whole dissimilar metals and corrosion issues. Let's see if I can pick this one off of here. There we go. So we'll go put this one on here. Now this one goes back behind there. And that's weird. I don't know what. Oh, you know what this is? This is an oil line. That's why it's black. And these are not. These are fuel lines. So that's how the injection pump is oiled. Comes through here and comes into the side. That's exactly what that is. You can see the rest are, you know, kind of diesel fuel color. Well, not, they're golden brown, and that one's black. So that's the injection pump oiling line. So I'll connect that one there. And I'll go ahead and show you how this connects. So from the lift pump, you have a barbed fitting. Barbed by, I mean, like this. It's like a barbed fitting. This one has like 3 ridges on it. So it comes out of here and goes into your main fuel filter housing. See the N arrow? Then it goes through the fuel filter, and then it comes out of the fuel filter and back down, and this attaches back to the injection pump. So that's how they send and return from the filter. Then I guess, okay, here's one of the diesel return lines from the, what's it called? The injector. You know, that goes on there like that. And I guess this is a return. And I guess here's another return. It goes to the back of the injection pump right here. I'm assuming it's a return. And I guess here's the main return back to the tank. I'm just kind of guessing. I haven't read about this in the field service manual, but that makes sense. So anyway, I do have this one here. I don't remember what this one came out of, but I guess I just find it. It's bigger than the rest of them. And it also has a check ball or some sort of spring in there. Yeah, that also almost looks like a rack damper. No, there's no rack damper on here. I don't know what this one is. Doesn't go, that would be vacuum. Anyway, I will find it soon enough. Okay, I see where I messed up earlier. Here's a picture. What the hell's going on my camera? There we go. Of the injection pump, and you can see that number 13 here is a bypass valve. So the fact that they call it a valve means that's what this thing is. See that little valve in there? See if I can get into focus. Well, anyway, you can see in that hole. There we go. See, there's a little valve, and there's a ball down there. So that's what this is. So I'm actually not missing. Wow, what's wrong with the camera today? Number 3 right here is, oh, sealing ring, let's see. There we go, number 2. Union screw. So what they call all the bolts, the normal banjo bolts, like a 2, 2, see, 2. Interesting, that one's a 5 union screw, so it's just a different size. So all the normal banjo fittings are 2s in the diagram, but this number 13 is the weird one. You can see it even has that weird shaped, see, has a nut on it, like, you know, a socket head on it. That's what controls the bypass valve. So I guess when there's too much fuel, it comes through here and goes into the bypass. So that bypass, so I wasn't missing the guy here. I actually have it, but I had it in the wrong place. Back here is where the bypass valve goes, and it runs from right here, from this union fitting is what they call it. We call them banjo bolts here in the US. Change the crush washer there and put in the bypass valve. So this might be totally random, but for example, here's the little plugs like I pulled out of the injection pump when Bosch gave it back to me. But anytime I get a plug from a manufacturing, like on a brake line or, you know, a carburetor or a fuel pump, any kind of, I just save it. I put it in here because I think that's from a radiator. These come in so handy for just random stuff. Just save all your little plugs that manufacturers send you because they're great. Anytime you have to like take apart something or work on something, power steering pump, radiator, brake lines, fuel pumps, just grab one of your little plugs from the manufacturers and plug it up. Let's go check out the power steering pump. Okay, I cleaned up the original power steering pump and just put on 3 coats, and it came out nice. Like I said, I didn't paint the pulley. I wanted to keep that factory marking on there. Yeah, cleaned up really nice. Yeah, it looks really good. So now I'm going to put that back on the car. I'm sorry, back on the engine, because the power steering pump goes right here. And this is interesting. This is like an adjustment bracket. Yeah, this little guy, this little plastic adjustment bracket. You don't want to break that because it's plastic. Also, there's the original clip that I put back on that bracket. So regarding that little plastic adjustment doohickey, this little thing, yeah, I wanted to show you how that, so on the back of the power steering pump, there's this little steel rod that's pressed in through here. And that little bracket fits around there. So when you install it, you want to push that bracket in there with a tab on each side. And see, this has a tab here and a tab here. That little rod goes in between them right there. And then also on the power steering bracket, they have these very thick, Mercedes use these very thick washers. So when you're bolting it up, it goes through, and that very thick washer mounts to the front of that pump. Actually, I'm sorry, it's not the front. It's probably, yeah, it probably mounts on the back. I'm just looking at this, so that goes through there, and I can actually see the wear mark. Yeah, probably. That's like, yeah, that's how those go. These thick washers go on the back. You can see there's one there. You can see where the washer used to be. There's an outline of it. And then there's one up here. So that's how that mounts. So I'm going to go ahead and get that mounted up. Oh, I got the power steering pump on. And the way it goes on, all the bolts go in through the back. And use that real thick washer here, here, and here. And they go through the back and screw on. in the front. And not sure what this arm right here is for. I guess we'll see later. I thought like a long bolt would go through, but I looked at one of my cars that hasn't been taken apart, and that's how it is. So let me get all these fittings torqued down. Okay, I couldn't find any torque settings for the banjo bolts, so I'm just going to get them snug. And you know, when I fire it up, if it leaks, I'll snug them up a little bit more. Because again, that's into aluminum, so you know, I'm going to go like 10 foot-pounds or so, because you don't want to strip aluminum. Okay, it looks like these smaller ones are 17 millimeter. The one that's a little bit bigger, I didn't have the metric wrench, but it's a 3/4 or 3/4 SAE. This one back here is a 17 millimeter. And I'm not sure what these small ones are. Let me get a wrench and see. And these down here are 12. Now, guys, I can't stress enough, do not over torque any of these. This is aluminum and it will strip very easy. I'm just snugging everything up, and if it leaks, I'll torque it a little more. But I'm only putting like 10 foot-pounds on these. You don't want to over torque them. You'll strip it very easily. So let's see, torque these guys up. This is the oil feed. They naturally want to go a certain direction, so you don't want to stress the lines. So just let the lines go where they want. Now I'm going to put the gasket on, and see how this gasket has a little bit of a waffle looking pattern. I don't know if it's true, but a buddy of mine told me that's the type of gasket you want. They're much sturdier and last longer. I think Mercedes Source has these made. Anyway, that's what that looks like. So I'm going to go ahead and put the remove the tape, put the gasket on the engine, and get this mounted up. All right, I've got my Type 3 sealant. It's like an aircraft sealant. And I'm just going to paint some of this on here to hold the gasket in place. And I'm going to stick the gasket to the pump and then put the pump on the engine. This stuff is really good. I like to use it. So let's just paint some of this on here. Let's get a little bit more there. Don't want to go crazy. Just paint some on here. Okay. And then I can take my gasket, set it on there. See, it holds the gasket in place. Then I can lift the pump up and put it on the engine. Not the pump, I'm sorry, the housing. So that'll just hold it in place, and I'm going to go bolt it onto the engine now. So I have the gasket and oil filter housing up there. And when I was making this 10AN line, I totally forgot about the injection pump and lift pump being in the way. So I had the lines running straight out here and straight back in, and it didn't fit. So I just had this little elbow, this little 90 degree elbow here, so that way I could run it out and take it away from the injection pump. So that's going to allow, you know, the cooler to be bypassed. So this side of the engine's done. Everything's hooked up here. And the next video, I need to do the turbo and exhaust manifold and all the junk on this side of the engine. Still have a few pieces to go over here. Let's see, I need to torque down the front crank bolt to 200 foot-pounds. There's the turbo. I need to clean that up a little bit. There's the exhaust manifold, water pump, thermostat housing, alternator bracket. I think that's the AC bracket. No, that might be the alternator, and that might be the AC. Yeah, that's the AC, the condenser. So not too much left, then I'll put the pulleys on there. I'm going to clean this up. And I got a couple of belts over here to throw on the engine, and I should be able to fire this thing up.